Okay, go.
Hi, Steph. Hi, Jane. Pleasure to meet you both. My name is Susan Johnson, and we're going to go through a demo today of telematics. We sell Geotab. Are you familiar with telematics and Geotab?
I've somewhat, but I've never tried telematics before.
Okay, so you aren't currently using telematics?
No, I have watched it.
Okay,
of course.
Perfect. So if you're not currently using telematics, how do you regulate and monitor things like driver behavior, any of that? Is it just really on motor vehicle checks and if somebody gets a ticket?
Well, we are family owned. We're a close-knit group. They just get the job done. I pay them well, and I haven't had too many issues, but I have had delays on pools being built.
Okay.
They'll get an average ticket every now and then, but sometimes it should take 3 to 10 days to do some of the construction, and it ends up taking like 15. So I would like to keep an eye on that.
And Susan, we got about 170 vehicles because we're about a $40 million pool maintenance and construction company. A lot of people, a lot of trucks on the road, and so Jane and I were talking the other day about what are some of the issues, because we'll have somebody call us up and they want their pool clean and they want it done right now, and we need to figure out where these people are so that we can get them over there, and as well as minimize some of our our own liabilities. Like a couple of years ago, we had somebody not paying attention and slammed in the back of a car on the freeway, and so that costs a lot of money. And plus, that guy was in the hospital for a while, so we want to avoid any of those types of opportunities. And Jane pretty much manages the whole fleet of vehicles.
Okay, got it. And you said trucks and you said pool service, and I also heard construction. So you have kind of a fleet of pickup trucks that do your service, like your pool services, and I'm assuming maybe some heavier vehicles that may do construction?
Yes, we do. We have about 30 the mid-size trucks, dump trucks, things like that, to construct the pools, because our infinity pools run anywhere from about 90 to 115,000. So we do quite a bit, higher end, high quality. Sometimes we contract it out, but we like to try to. We have a team of 180 employees, so we have our team of guys.
Okay. And your business operations, is it basically daylight, I'm assuming, since it's hard to do pool construction at night?
Oh, yes.
And
unless
is it
it's
Monday
hot.
through Friday or weekends as well?
We work on weekends sometimes if we need to get the job done to make our customers happy.
Okay. And what about your pool services? The guys that clean the pool, are they 7 days a week?
We don't work on Sunday, not on Sundays.
Okay. And one last question. Are these vehicles residing at your offices? Do people come in and pick them up, or are they have possession of them 24/7?
They reside at our headquarters, at our location.
Okay. So you got nobody taking these home and using them after hours and things like that?
No. And sometimes we do lease some out, like the cement mixers. So.
Okay. Got it. All right. Well, I'm going to take you into our demo database. It's actually live information on real vehicles of our staff and employees, and we call it our friends and family database. You may see some things here that aren't going to be part of a starting package for you, because we do test many, many products. So in menu commands over here, you may see something like FleetCam, OK Alone. Those are add-in products. One of the nice things about Geotab is that it's a really expandable type of platform, and it's very customizable for your particular needs. In FleetCam, we've noticed in the industry that there's a considerable amount of people considering putting camera installation in the vehicles as well as the telematics device. So FleetCam is just one of the offers of cameras that we do have. And OK Alone is a lone worker. We have a lot of companies who workers go out into the field. They're constantly by themselves, sometimes remote locations, and they have a thing that they carry on them to basically alert somebody if they're in trouble. So, so you may see some things today. I'll point those out as we go along. But I will let you know that here at EnVue, we're really concerned about safety. We think that's one of the highest and best uses. Back in the industry when telematics was in its infancy, just knowing where somebody was, the where was Waldo, I'll call it, side of it, was most important. Being able to put the dot on the map and follow that vehicle movement around. Now we've come progressively further, and a lot of it is about safety, and we also have engine health, etc. Have you ever seen a telematics device?
No, we have used GPS devices before, just the Garmin's.
Okay.
But other than that, if I need to find them, I call.
Okay, great. So the GeoTab device that you see pictured here is a very small frame device. It's all self-contained, so there's no external wires, no splicing, or no having to have a professional install done. Now, that being said, you can plug this directly into what's called an OBD port. And some of your heavier duty vehicles, maybe those dump trucks, they would have a slightly different port than what's in your pickup trucks. But we have harnesses for them. And although you can directly plug them in, we always recommend that you use a harness. It's very simple. It's kind of like an extension cable. And since you guys are a construction company, you're probably pretty familiar with all different types of things, it should be fairly easy for you guys to self-install. We can also offer professional installation services, but I don't think in your case, with the level of technology and things that you deal with on a daily basis, that it would be necessary. Okay. I can tell you a couple things about the GeoTab device itself. It does record everything second by second. So again, history, it used to be like every 2 minutes you would get a location, but we are doing speed and location every single second. So it's a very rich, complex amount of data available. And one of the things that we do here at EnVue is when we roll out a new program is we take you through the system little bit by little bit. So we're not like, here, we'll hand you a manual, this is how it works, and walk away. What we're here to do is to help you find a return on investment. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what about that return on investment kind of appeals to you? How do you think that it would give you a return?
Well, you did set it. Well, you haven't. Does it check the engine? Is it just a GPS device?
No, it does. It does the safety-related data, engine health, fuel economy, so much. So we're going to go through all of that, and maybe those will answer some things for you as far as where you might find some return on investment. We'll circle back to that question in a little bit. How about that?
Okay, because maintenance is a big issue. Because a lot of the trucks we get on auction.
Oh, okay. All right.
They're not all the same. They're not all. Some of them are Suzuki, some are Ford, but the actual maintenance of it, considering what we do to the trucks, that's where the books get heavy. So that's kind of where I'm looking to.
One of the other things that Jane and I were talking about is, when the winter time hits, is really our slowest season for pool cleaning and construction. And so we have to lay off some people because our workload drops, and then we staff back up. And if we can save some money in fuel economy, then we can apply that to keeping more people on board.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm sure people like to keep their job on a full year basis, so that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'm going to start a demo. This is supposed to be a really interactive session, so if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me at any time. I'm going to pause, ask you if you like what you're seeing. Does it all make sense? Do you need some more explanation? So I'm going to start with the dashboard portion. And what you may notice is that we have a lot of proprietary reporting. There is numerous amount of reports that are available through GeoTab, but we do a lot to customize those or create new type of reporting that GeoTab hasn't had in existence before to really hone in on information that is useful to your business and can help transform your operations. And again, at the end of the day, save some money, because that's what it's all about. So to that end, we have something called a driver score. And the driver score is a way to rank drivers 0 to 100, 0 being worst, 100 being best, just like you're in school. And we have a baseline score of 70. So you're going to notice some people are green, all the people above that 70 score, and those having behaviors that are a little less than desired are shown in red. And what makes up this particular score are 3 elements of driver behavior: harsh cornering, fast or harsh braking, and fast acceleration, along with speeding over the posted road speed. We also have a second iteration of this report, which also includes seatbelt data, because we all know that in every state in the United States, you're required to wear your seatbelt. And that is also another issue. We actually know if the seatbelt is buckled or unbuckled because we're directly connected to the onboard diagnostic port and the computer within the vehicle. So that baseline score of 70 is kind of our average C student, okay? They're not the best people out there. They could be doing better, like the Honda, but they can be doing worse, like the Traverse. I will note to you that in our friends and family database, we have a lot of young adults in here. So it's not shocking to me, maybe shocking to you, that we have some scores in the 40s. In addition, we have that seatbelt data in a second iteration of the report. When we came out with our first scoring matrix, seatbelt data wasn't really reliable up until about 3 years ago, where we started to have a saturation of greater than 80%. We launched a score at the end of last year when we started to get close to 95% of saturation of seatbelt data, and thought it was time to bring that data to the forefront for our folks. And as you can see here, this is based on 5 elements, where the other score is only based on 4. So with the Santa Fe, you can see a score of 75.5 will vary just a little bit different to 78 here, because we're scoring on more elements and each element has a different weight to the scoring table. Okay, so it makes it really easy for you to be able to tell how your driver is doing or how that vehicle is being driven. One quick question for you. Like here you can see certain vehicles are just named after the vehicle and certain vehicles have a name by them. Do the same vehicles get driven by the same people all the time, or are they more pool and multi-use, multi-user type of vehicles?
Well, we have the trucks that are driven by our like the contractors, the designers, but the mid-size utility vehicles, like the dump trucks, everybody kind of drives those. It's whatever's available for the job size.
Okay, so the majority of the fleet, the guys that go out and service the pools, and of the 170, how many of those would you think are driven by multi-users?
Probably half.
Half, okay. So would you be interested in knowing who's actually in the vehicle on any given trip on any given day?
I would. Like to know, especially if something happens to the vehicle.
Well, we do have an additional piece of equipment that can go with the GeoTab device. When we looked at the GeoTab device, I just wanted to call out, if I've got a good picture. Here, there's an expansion port. So as I said, GeoTab allows for a lot of different industry, telematics industries like the cameras and other things, and they also manufacture some things. And one of those is a driver ID. It would be as simple as having every driver issue a sticker or a key fob. We recommend the stickers because they can put it on the back of their license in some states. They can put it on an ID badge. We've had some clients actually just buy plain credit card stock, blank stock, and put it on there. And all the driver does is they swipe the sticker across a panel that gets mounted in the vehicle on the dashboard, and it identifies them to the trip.
Okay.
Okay. So in that manner, when we have a driver score, we actually would flip this from being reported by device, now reported directly by driver logging in. So it doesn't matter what vehicle they drive, their score and their behaviors follow them. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, so along with those elements of braking, cornering, acceleration, and seatbelt, we like to take a deeper dive into speeding, specifically because speeding can happen over much longer distances in time. And as we know, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration basically tells us high velocity speeds or speeds above posted road speeds generally become an issue when somebody gets into an incident or accident. Meaning of which they would tend to have higher injury rates and more damage to the vehicle. So we report that by speed, by total duration of the driving duration. That would be their windshield time, and then also by the driving distance, because again, distance and time are a big element in speeding. And this is speeding over the posted road speed. And although those road speeds are posted, most people think that there's a comfortable number above that posted speed limit that they can actually utilize the vehicle without having an issue. I'm air quoting issue here, meaning they don't think a red light, siren's going to come on behind them, or they won't get a ticket. And we generally see an industry average across best practices of that being around 6 to 8 miles an hour over the posted speed limit.
Okay.
Okay. The next we take in high velocity speeds. So speeds above 70, 75, and 80. And I know that you're in Texas, and I know some roadways there are 70, and there's even a road running, I believe, between San Antonio and Austin that you can do 85 on. Well, that may be okay, but maybe you don't want folks going above those particular speeds. And this is just a way to tell you how many times we've seen those type of incidences. In addition to reporting in this manner between a dashboard and reports that will come to you through email automatically, is we can also have alerts for specific behaviors or occurrences where you may want to be notified immediately. Say you get something like a check engine light coming on. Maybe you want to see that daily. Maybe you want to see it the minute it happens. We have the ability to push reports on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, in addition to pushing singular alerts about behaviors you want to know right on the spot. And one of those is something called a possible accident. So you talked about the rear end collision. When we see a change of speed or a G-force that's outside what the normal, we'll call it road noise is, and normal speed, we believe that it may be an incident or accident, and we can immediately notify somebody of your choosing by email, if it be both of you or several people, so that you could reach out to that employee, number one, to make sure they're okay, and to assess what the issue is and see how you can help.
Okay.
Sound good?
That would be good. And also one of the things I like about that is that these vehicles usually just don't have one person in there. The construction vehicles, when they're going out to a job, they may have 4 or 5 people in these cars.
Ah, okay. Well, then it would be good to know if something did happen, because you've got a lot of bodies at risk.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So seatbelt, although it's included in the score, we do like to hone in on it as a little more intensive, because the score, unless you look at the actual detail in the score, you could have somebody who is reluctant to wear their seatbelt, and it may not be so reflected in the score, because it could, depending on your weighting, it could be worth less or more, depending on how you feel about seatbelt usage. So we like to call that out. And you're going to notice here, and as you may have noticed in some of these reports, we can report in multiple different factors. In this case, we do it by the distance that they weren't wearing their seatbelt. Here, we did it by the count of specific incidences. And here, we're actually doing percentages by distance and also by time. So, in seatbelt, we could tell you the distance, how many times they weren't wearing it, and in addition, how many minutes or hours, hopefully not, that they weren't wearing their seatbelt. So as I was saying at the very beginning, there's a lot of configuration flexibility for you to be able to measure those things in the manner that you wish and that you think will have the greatest impact to your company.
So so Susan, the chart is telling us what? That the green Subaru isn't wearing their seatbelt as much as the other ones? that what it's saying?
Correct. So this is saying that the green Subaru had a seatbelt exception. The seatbelt was not being worn, and he did that for 2.5 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be multiple types of instances of that occurring. And just like in this report where we tell you how many times they sped above 80, 75, and 70, we can also tell you the number of times they were not wearing their seatbelt. And we look at seatbelt at speed above 6 miles an hour. So once the vehicle reaches a velocity of 6 miles an hour and they're not wearing their seatbelt, it will throw the exception.
Okay.
We also look at a couple of other things. Idling is one of the things that we find for folks that haven't used any type of telematics in the past. Is it just a way to measure how much idle time in the vehicle is costing you? And that's literally the vehicle being turned on and it not moving. So we don't count idle time at things like stoplights and railroad crossings and stuff like that, but we do count it the minute they get above 3 minutes and 20 seconds. I know that sounds like an odd number, but it comes out to 200 seconds. So we don't count idling at things like traffic lights.
Okay.
And then what we do is we put that into a report. We use a nice little formula given us by the EPA that tells us the burn rate for every hour of idling, and we can tell you how much that costs you on a monthly basis. So it's a way for you to be able to monitor that behavior. I mean, maybe sometimes idling is necessary for you guys. Maybe you allow them to idle in the hottest months, because I know it can get super hot in Texas. When they're on a job site, and maybe they want to go and just cool off for a little bit. But you can quantify what that means to your business. And just to note, the EPA also says that idling is one of the most damaging things that can be done to the current electronically based vehicles that we have today. So the wear and tear of idling, if somebody idled an hour every single day of the year, it's literally like almost putting 40 to 50,000 extra miles on that vehicle of wear and tear.
That's good.
We also like to call out the people who are idling a lot. In this case, we have a Jeep yesterday, over 45%. 45% of the engine being on that vehicle was not in motion. So that's a high amount of idle. And again, at 45% of the engine being on, you can guarantee that the vehicle itself will have to be maintained in a different manner.
So we could run a report over like a 3-month period to see what the idling time is for each driver.
Absolutely. So all reporting in here, just to note, Geotab records all this information, and they guarantee at least a year's worth of data for you. But I can tell you in most cases, we've never had to have companies archive. We have some tremendously large companies that we do have archives that occur, but we're talking in excess of 3,000 vehicles. And even though they archive that data, it's still available to the client, because what they like to do is, we call this a live environment. Well, when something gets as old as 2 and 3 and 4 years old worth of data, it's really considered in the industry as data at rest, meaning there's not live data coming in, so it can be moved to a different server to allow you more room on your active server that's taking in all live data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So safety, idling, engine health. We also look at the health of the devices themselves. So this will tell you if we're having any issues with the devices communicating. It's not very common. Geotab has a less than 1% failure rate on their devices, but there could be instances why a device may not communicate. The vehicle could be in the shop. Here in Florida, where I live, if you have a vehicle inside a building, a facility, the battery must be disconnected. Well, because the unit powers directly from the OBD port, if we lose battery on the vehicle, we'll lose communication with the device as well.
I have a question. You were talking about how the employee using the vehicle can scan a sticker or their ID so you know who's driving.
Yes, ma'am.
What if they don't? What if they just take the car and go to the job when something happens? Like, we don't know who was driving it. What if they don't scan their
Oh, good question. We make the unit beep at them
Okay. The whole time?
the whole time until somebody logs in. So we
Okay.
have a slight delay. You can choose 15 seconds, 20 seconds, all the way up to 2 minutes before the actual little panel will start beeping. And I can tell you, unfortunately, I did it to a valet parker. I forgot to tell him about my key, my fob on my keychain, and
Mm-hmm.
he came up and my device was beeping like crazy. So I pulled a couple extra dollars out of my pocket of the tip that I was going to give him because I know how annoying it is. The beeping is in excess of 90 decibels, and I know that may not mean a lot, but think about being behind a lawnmower. That's how loud it is.
Okay.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. So just to note, in our database, it's very common to see devices that have been unplugged because we move things around all the time. We're constantly testing. I even take a device on the road with me and plug them into rental cars. We just do that because the more data that Geotab has as a whole entity is the more that they can do some analytics across all their clients. And what you might see in here is fleet industry trends. And those trends are going to say across all the clients and all the devices they have, and they have in excess of 1.5 million devices worldwide. It will tell you what the most common things that they see. So right now, the age of fleet vehicles within Geotab is about 4.1 years, and you can see the distribution of the how many vehicles that they have of each year. Light duty, what the most popular vehicle is, Ford F-150 within their fleet, idling trends. These are the averages across all of their clients. So it gives you some really good empirical data for where you stand as a company compared to everybody else. Everybody always asks me about benchmarking. How do we benchmark against everybody else? Well, these kind of trends will tell you exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, are you ready to see how it actually works and what the
Sure.
map and things look like? Awesome. All right, so going into the map view, it's always going to default us to what's going on right now. And as you can see, we have a wide distribution of vehicles. We have some in the Northeast, we've got one in Ohio, we have some in Florida, and a bunch in Texas, in your home state. So again, this is our friends and family. We're very nationwide type company, and our employees actually reside everywhere. So when you call in for support, you could be speaking to somebody in Connecticut. You could be speaking to somebody on my bilingual team who are located in Monterrey, Mexico, or you could be speaking to somebody in Louisiana or Texas. So again, for us for support, just to note, you can always reach us by clicking here, and that will give you our 800 number. We're available pretty much your time from 8 to 6. We do not have staff on the weekend, but there is an on-call person who watches for, we'll call them emergency situations. We do have some compliance things and drivers that do some logging for hours of service. You're not required to do that within your state and your vehicles unless you're exceeding in some of those large vehicles more than 150 air miles. Do you ever go more than 150 air miles outside of your location?
Not really, because we're DFW based.
Okay.
So just in this area, Frisco,
Okay.
Prosper, Salina, they shouldn't go 150 miles. Sometime to pick up the equipment, but it still wouldn't be 150 miles. I don't believe.
Okay. So you've never had any questions about any kind of federal compliance on your larger heavy-duty vehicles?
No, we don't service outside Texas.
Okay, perfect. Yet. Okay. Well, I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so what we can see, just a little while ago, we were seeing that Katie was on here, and she was shown as a triangle and that she was driving. She's now stopped, and you can see that she's represented here as being stopped just about 40 seconds ago. So she's currently in Cambridge. So you may notice a couple of different things. Like we have a vehicle here shown as a star. That star means that we know exactly where that vehicle is because we put an imaginary fence. It's called a geofence, or we call them zones. around that location, and we can tell you when a vehicle is in or out of that location. So if you wanted to have, say, all of your different suppliers on here, you can know when somebody is actually at a supplier. And it might be good for you to know, because you're going to get billed from that supplier, right, at some point, to know that somebody was actually there and buying something, because they may forget to send you in the ticket of something that they purchased or something else, but you could at least verify that somebody was actually there purchasing something. And then you got to chase down that person to get the copy of whatever they were supposed to give you. But it's a good indication there. Also, maybe some of your job sites. I know you say, 10 days is about the average, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer. We can actually report when they're on a job site. So the zones can expire. You can put them in temporarily. It's pretty easy. You can actually hand draw them on the map, or send us a list of addresses and what you want it called, and we can import them for you. But it might be good to know the amount of man hours, by us telling you how long that they were there. Do they get there on time in the morning, right? They should be there bright and early with the cock-a-doodle-doos, right, as soon as the sun comes up, if they're doing construction, correct?
Yes.
All right, so you're going to know because they're coming into your office to pick up your truck, number one, but from the time they pick up the truck in your office, how long is it actually taking them to get there? Have they decided to go to McDonald's and have a cup of coffee and an Egg McMuffin? You'd want to know that.
That's important, because one of the things that we do on the service side is that we have the installers, when they get to somebody's house, we like to notify the client that there is somebody at their house cleaning
they're
their
on
pool.
the way.
They're on the way, or they're actually there, because most people are working during the day. Some people work at their house, but the customers, that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is just communicating with our client who's at their house and when they left. On job sites, clients like to know, what time did people show up, and we can text them, let them know that, there are people at your house right now working on your pool.
Well, awesome, because we can tell you our Honda is at Randy's house, and the Edge is at Pickett. So you may have noticed that some of these devices have a name in parentheses by them. That's somebody legitimately logging in, like we were talking about the driver ID, into that particular device. Okay. And that person will stay with the record. So if you go look at trip history, which I'm going to show you in a minute, you'd actually see who was driving at the time. And that's how we can follow all their behaviors from a safety aspect as well. So I'm going to hone in on Katie here, because she's actually back to driving. And you can see that we can see where she is. She's currently on the I-70. She's doing 55 miles an hour, and the road speed is 70 miles an hour. So Katie's being a good girl right now, and she's not speeding. And the system itself is going to update. Well, there we go. It self-updates up here. It's auto updating. And as we're getting new information from the vehicle, as I said, we record everything second by second. We send the data from the device back to our servers every 5 to 45 seconds. 5 seconds when they're doing something that, like if they're doing a lot of braking, or they're going around a big corner. Take a cloverleaf, for instance. There's a lot of force on that. There's a lot of G-force. There's some braking going into it. There's acceleration coming out. So those data transmission points will be a lot closer together. If somebody's basically going down a roadway, maintaining constant speed with not a lot of turning and cornering and braking going on, the data transmission points are a little further apart. We never miss any data. It's just how long it will take. And that data transmission is through cellular network. So we look for the best carrier for your location. Actually, pretty much all the carriers we have are great in the Metroplex. And we do offer services on Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile.
Okay. And can you tell if somebody's texting?
We can't from our device, but we do. As I said, Geotab is really great about expandability. There are marketplace items from having a dock and lock station that they have to put their phone in, to programs on their phone that do talk to the device and know when the vehicle's in motion, to be able to alert you to those types of behaviors.
Okay.
So we've been watching Katie, and if we look, Katie's now doing 78 miles an hour. Not so good girl in speeding right now. So she is 8 miles above the posted speed, and what you can see was we've had speeding alerts. You see one speeding alert, that's our standard speed, anything over 7 miles an hour. And we also have some custom speeding. As I said, customization in this platform is really great. So if you don't like a rule or you want it changed slightly differently, maybe for you seatbelt because the guys might drive from one side of a job site to the other, maybe you're okay with them not wearing their seatbelt. I particularly am not, but we do have some companies, they say, hey, we're on a pretty big job site, or they need to move the trucks around occasionally to let a cement truck in, or gunite truck in, whatever makes sense. And they said, look, I don't want to know if they're on a job site and they're not wearing a seatbelt if they're doing less than 15 miles an hour. Well, we can create a rule for that to say if they're on a site, and we'll call it customer, and they're not driving over 15 miles an hour, don't include it as a seatbelt infraction.
So is there an alarm going off on Katie right now for speeding?
We can make the unit beep. It isn't for the posted speed limit because that database of posted speed limits is very, very large. You figure basically every inch of roadway in the United States. So it does have to come back to our servers to be able to identify the speed itself. But we could send a beep. Unfortunately, it would be slightly after the event had occurred, but we do have threshold speed beeping, meaning, remember we talked about, that speed you don't want somebody to go when we were looking at the speed bands? We can make the unit beep on a specific speed. So if Katie gets to 80, we could make the unit beep.
Right.
Just like the driver, the driver ID. There are some additional feedbacks. I'll show you those in a second, but they're related to the
So how do you
actual
keep them, Susan? How do you, I'm sorry, how do you keep them from just unplugging the unit because it's annoying?
You can't really keep a driver from doing that. That's why we recommend that harness, kind of out of sight, out of mind. We do recommend that no device install, even directly into the onboard diagnostic port, does not have a zip tie to keep it in place, because vehicle movement and other things could eventually rattle that device loose. If they wind up kneeing it, kicking it, or some other thing, they could knock it loose. So the zip tie is there to make it tight. But what we did see on the front page about the device not communicating would give you an indication if it was being unplugged. We also have an unplug, replug rule, which would be able to tell you if they're randomly doing it on given days. Since your guys are not taking their vehicles home, it's probably not very common, but it is common in some other fleets sometimes for people to actually unplug the device after work hours and plug it back in the morning. And to that end, we have something called a odometer drift report, and we can tell you how many miles that they drove with the device unplugged.
Do we get alerted if they unplug the device?
When it's plugged back in, because the device itself does not have a battery. So when it does get plugged back in, it goes on that unplug replug rule.
Okay.
All right, so we've been watching Katie for a while driving. She's probably still speeding. Yes, she is now. She's at 84. Oh, Katie girl, slow down. But I'm going to take you to trip history now. So all that data we're collecting, and you can see live there, will also show you the trip history view. And I'm going to go to the Edge. The Edge is actually my husband's vehicle, and yes, he does know there's a device in there. Everybody asks me that question, so I'll answer it in advance. And we can see his actual detailed trip history. What's really cool about this is that we can expand that map view, and we can actually take it all the way down to make a pretty big map. If we look up here, we can see that there's certain rules that might have been broken. So we had some after hours usage this morning. We just have a rule set on our vehicles that said if the vehicle is driven anytime before 6 a.m. and anytime after 8 p.m., consider it after hours. It's not a rule that you guys will probably need, except in the case that you might want to know if one of your vehicles is being used at night from your lot there, because most likely if that vehicle's moving after hours from your location, it's probably not being driven by somebody you know.
Okay. And is there a way to we've had some issues with some of the guys drinking on the job and some complaints from customers. Is there any way that it would be able to track maybe erratic behavior different than how they're driving, or even maybe a breathalyzer device?
Actually, that's an interesting question, because there is a breathalyzer device that will actually talk to the geotab unit. It can do ignition interrupt or disengage. We don't recommend that, but the devices can tell you, and it can report back directly to this if it does detect somebody who A, hasn't done the breathalyzer as they're getting in, or B, obviously has a abnormal reading.
Okay. What?
All right, so just here's the second by second detail. You can also see that we have weather. And unfortunately, I forgot to show you. We have weather on current and also trip history, which is great if there's an incident or accident to know if it was raining, cloudy, stormy, or the like. But we also have traffic. And what you may notice, this is Google Maps, Google Traffic, and Google Weather. We're kind of an all Google house over here. So if we go back to the trip history, again, second by second detail, what you might notice is some of these stars. These are known locations that the vehicle went to. And as you can see, zooming in here, 69257 is my house where my husband departed this morning, and he went to 7-Eleven to get some coffee, and he came back home for something and then left and went to work.
That's
All
kind
the
of cool.
detail for that is over here as well. You can see that a departure at 5:47 this morning to the 7-Eleven, back to the house for about 8 minutes, and then off to work.
Hey, Susan, I
thought he might have
we've got
died.
Hey, we got a kind of a hard stop here at 12:30, so just FYI.
Okay.
It'll be 1:30 your time.
Okay, awesome. So from there, vehicles themselves were recording a lot of information. The odometer reading, this is real time, right, from the vehicle itself. You have different groups. You've got the people who do construction, the people who do service. You may have managers of those different groups. We can group the vehicles and group user rights so that people can only see what you want them to see. In addition to that, you may want to have if you have somebody calling or texting your clients to let them know that somebody's been at a location, the easiest way to do it would be straight from the map view. And those folks, you may not want them to see the driver behaviors. We can make custom clearances for what they can and can't see within the system. Our activities section, collision reconstruction, all of our risk management reports are warehoused here. Just to know, all these reports are available on demand, but we also set them up for scheduled report transmission to you. And those can be daily, weekly, or monthly. Speed profile is exactly what it sounds like. And this is some really great information. If you do have an incident or accident, it will show you the actual speed of the vehicle compared to the road-based speed. We have driver congregation. Again, it may not mean a lot to you. It doesn't mean a lot to most of our clients, but it will tell you if any vehicles are congregating at the same location. We did have an incident with one of our clients that had a bunch of drivers sitting about 2 miles away from their location at the end of the day, about a half hour before clock out at a Hooters. So driver congregation was very, very important to them, because their drivers, when they came back before clock out time, were required to do some maintenance and sweeping and other work in the warehouse. And the reason they went to Hooters is so they didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Work hours will tell you exactly when the vehicle is being utilized. And the work hours on the vehicle can follow also by driver. So we do have the ability to do it by the vehicle or by the driver themselves. So you can see the actual drivers and how long that they've been utilizing the vehicle over any period of time. IFTA and HOS, because you don't have any compliance, wouldn't be of much value to you. So on those menu commands, they just don't exist.
Okay.
We're actively looking at all the faults, excuse me, on vehicles, and that includes things like firmware being applied, device having poor quality. That could be somebody parked in a garage or parked underground garage. On the vehicle itself, we have an O2 sensor that's high. So a lot of different information. We try and boil it down just like you saw on that dashboard with the engine health report, which will give you the 3 highest reasons that a vehicle will be broken down. That would be your check engine light, your higher general vehicle warning lights, or a battery drain. Fuel usage, we talked about, the amount of fuel you use is probably your second largest expense on the vehicle itself, besides buying them, right?
Yes.
So we can kind of tell you that fuel economy. And what you may notice between like vehicles is that even the same model year could have different MPG, and it's directly related to how the person is driving that vehicle. The more they speed, the lower their fuel economy.
Well, in the DFW area, there's so many gas stations that we have an account with one gas station, and we make sure that they stop at those gas stations to fill up. That way we know the quality of fuel is there, it's consistent, so that we can avoid some of these other issues and not get some bad gas.
The water and the fuel.
So do they actually have a fuel card, or is it just a local type fuel card? Is it a national fuel card?
It's local.
It's local.
I guess I could use it nationally if there's a national chain, but it's pretty much local.
Okay, because we do some incorporation of fuel.
So this is a lot of information?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to catch up. It's a lot of information, but can you actually show reports that show how much money we are saving if we use you guys versus what it would have been in the past if we make sure our guys are fueling, taking the right route, maintenance? Is there an exact number you can show of savings that month?
Some of that's a little difficult in a way, because it's really subjective on your productivity and certain factors of your your particular business. But what we can say that across clients, we see anywhere between a 10 and 15% fuel savings on an annualized basis. One reason is because people know now that they can be seen. So, taking the long way home and making extra stops and driving, further than they need to, instead of going to their favorite barbecue joint, which might be 30 miles from the job site, they're going to know that somebody can see that on a daily basis. So we see a natural occurrence of a reduction in miles just because of the visibility. The safety aspect, it's kind of hard to put a real number on it, but if you can make your driver safer, you know that your liability and risk goes down quite a bit. I don't know what the full cost was in that rear end collision you had between the doctor bills and bent metal and everything else, but we know that the National Highway Traffic Safety tells us the average cost of an accident just on bent metal and liability to property is $16,000 to $18,000. So if you know how many accidents you had last year, and then since you've been using telematics, we've done studies over years with clients to show them the reductions. And we can kind of put a dollar amount around it. You guys would know the best dollar amount. But if we just take that average of $16,000 per accident, not including personal liability, like to health and human being, but just property liability, we could put a number around that.
Okay.
Idling would be tough. We can tell you a benchmark, what we see, and then once you proactively, if the numbers are high, and I can tell you we've had clients that didn't know that most of their vehicles were idling 30, 40, 50% of the day. And then when we look at that over the course of time, we can tell you what those savings are. we can also equate if we reduce speeds, what that saving is, because the EPA also says for every 5 miles over 60, it's like spending an extra 18 to 20 cents a gallon. So if you can, once we monitor those behaviors, we can take those as a benchmark and look at some ROI later after you've been using the system for a while.
Okay.
And the productivity end, again, subjective, because I need to know how much you pay your employees and, if they get overtime and is overtime necessary. We do find a lot with our people that start using telematics that their overtime seems to go down when, again, people know that their activity is being monitored.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So in wrapping up, I did want to circle back because we did talk about ROI, and that was one of the first questions. So to kind of summarize that, we believe there's an ROI in fuel savings. We believe that there's an ROI in your productivity. And we believe that there's a very tangible ROI in monitoring safety. So those are kind of the things that we believe will hit your bottom line. And again, it's something that we have to investigate where you are right now and where we can get you.
Okay.
Okay.
So where do we go from here?
Okay. Well, do you have any other questions for me?
No, I'm good. Jane, how about you?
No, I'm
Awesome.
been following. Yeah.
Okay. So where we go from here is we can actually set you up with a pilot. And what a pilot does is it has a device or number of devices based on your size of fleet. I'd recommend somewhere between 5 and 8 devices for you to test the system out and see what kind of things that you can see and how much value they bring to you. I think one of the biggest values right off the bat is you're going to be able to see when homes are being serviced and those folks that are reaching out. And I love that because my pool person never calls me and lets me know when they're coming. They just wind up showing up. So I always have to remember Monday through Friday to leave the side gate unlocked to my house because I never know when they're going to come. So with that kind of level of service, you can make those calls much faster than waiting for somebody from the field to say, hey, I'm done with the Joneses' house. Hey, I'm done with the Smith's house. They could proactively do that right from monitoring the driver's locations.
So is the pilot, is this something we're going to do for free? And then if we like it, how's all that work?
And how long is it?
We want to know what our cost is involved in here.
Sure. So we do have a cost, obviously, communication charges and everything else. So there is a pilot fee of $30 per vehicle per month. We generally run our pilots from 45 to 60 days. We believe that should be a decent amount of time. And we don't start the pilot officially until the devices are installed and you've actually been trained by myself or one of our trainers on staff. So you fully engage and you're in the pilot, ready to use it.
So are you who installs these things?
Well, as I said, installation can be self-installed. And if you give me just a quick minute, I am going to bring up a photo for you and show you the device with the harness. It's not necessary that you have the harness, but it is recommended because, as I said, it just gets it kind of out of sight, out of mind, right? That resist the urge for air quote tampering or the like. So let me get the photo open. Okay. So this is a shortened harness, but this is basically what the harness would look like. You'd unplug the current OBD port. You'd replace that port with this end. It still allow for, in some states, they do emissions check through that OBD port. And then the device gets plugged in the other end. As you can see, these nice zip ties, right? Tying everything nice and tight. And then all of this gets tucked underneath the dashboard.
Okay.
Okay, that's pretty simple.
Yeah, we have very detailed instructions along with video instruction as well on how everything gets installed.
Oh, good.
So, you want to move forward with a pilot today?
How much is it if we decide we like the product?
Well, pricing, we can get pricing to you as well. Part of the pilot agreement will tell you what the commercial pricing is, but it's approximately in the neighborhood of $26 a month. and the device and the harness come in at just under $100, about $98, $99. If you do add the driver identification, that is at additional cost, and that's what the little pad looks like with the key fob. We don't charge any extra outside the cost of that, and this is what the sticker looks like. So it'd just be the cost of that driver ID and the stickers themselves. And the driver ID runs somewhere about $50, $55, and the stickers themselves run $350 each. It's near field communication, so there is a small amount of electronics in here. And as you can see, there's a serialized number that we identify the person to that serial number in the system to be able to track them.
Okay.
Do you have any, well, I was just somewhat curious, Susan, real quick. Do you have any other programs available? Because, you know, we're looking at a $18,000 equipment cost, capital expenditure just that we need to pay to equip all the vehicles. So is that the best price we can get, or?
We actually have a lease to own option where we finance the equipment over the term of the agreement, which is generally 36 months. So it does add to that $26 a month price for the equipment. We don't put any additional, i.e., you know, interest funding on that. So it lends itself to be about $4 extra a month.
Oh, okay. So about $30 a month.
Correct.
Now the pilot, when we do the pilot, the equipment, we pay the equipment after the, okay.
Yeah, so the equipment is free for usage during the pilot. If you do wind up signing a commercial contract, you will be billed for those devices. But during the pilot, there is a $30 fee. Obviously, it's an incentive for you to engage with us in a pilot, and also for us to cover a lot of our out-of-pocket costs. Because as you can see, the setup and training in this is pretty intensive. And we like to be able to give you all of the attention that we can give you during the pilot to make sure that this is a right fit for you.
Okay.
And how long is the contract for?
The contracts are 36 months, especially 36 months if you're doing a lease to own. We can do them for shorter periods, but the price does go up incrementally, especially on the lease to own, because we've got to amortize that equipment over a shorter period of time.
Okay. Yeah, I think, Steph, what do you think? There's no harm in trying it out. It sounds good. I want to see if I'll be able to work the data.
I think that we ought to, it's something that we ought to go ahead and consider. Why don't we have a conversation offline, and then you can get back with Susan later on today.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a simple couple-page agreement for the pilot, and again, it does spell out the pricing for you moving forward into a commercial contract. As I said, all the equipment is deferred. We can even give you some of the driver IDs if you're interested in that, and have you pilot that as well.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right. Well, I got to get to another meeting here, but sure appreciate your time.
Okay, appreciate your time too. I hope you both have a great day.
Okay, thanks.